Well, it appears that the feminist manifestation that plagues the Scottish Government has managed to wrangle its way into the academia for children as young, in this case anyway, as nursery level age, by their latest publication banging on about misogyny that apparently plagues children at that age. Getting it right for girls, challenging misogynistic attitudes among children and young people. Misogynistic attitudes among children and young people. While there can be no doubt that there has been significant progress made in the journey towards gender equality within our society, much ground remains to be covered before we reach the desired destination. There's concern about the prevalence of such attitudes within our schools, colleges and universities, and indeed even in our nurseries. Clearly misogyny, a dislike for, contempt or a belief in the inferiority of women begins to take root in the early years of a child's development, much of which is influenced by the home environment. Is that so? Such attitudes, if unchallenged at home or at school and college and beyond, can become firmly embedded. The effect of such a culture of misogyny and sexist stereotyping on children and young people. When they say children and young people, every single publication is the same. When they say children and young people, they mean girls. They don't mean men at all. Or boys, I should say. Both female and male, that's nice of you, can be significant in hindering personal and social development in the short term, as well as having long-term damaging consequences for individuals and for society as a whole. With this in mind, it's important that members are aware of the issue. With some focus groups researched by the EIS has highlighted that misogynistic attitudes towards women and girls are evident in a variety of forms within the educational establishments, from overt sexist bullying to casual sexist comments, which some seek to trivialise as humour. Both boys and girls, men and women, can be the perpetrators of such behaviour, albeit by females to a lesser extent. Overall, women and girls are more likely to be the targets of sexist behaviour. Of course they are. The research suggests that educational establishments require more support to develop more consistent, coherent approaches to the promotion of gender equality and towards tackling the problem of sexual harassment and bullying of young women and girls, and of boys and young men who are gay and who are judged by others to be failing to conform to gender norms. The guidance intends to support members in addressing the issues at establishment level for the benefit of all learners, female and male, seeking to highlight the possible dangers of allowing misogynistic attitudes to prevail and suggest some approaches which members currently find useful in addressing the problem. In 2016, misogyny is a thriving form of communication, with average song lyrics and belittling comments from influential public figures all playing their role in promoting the increasingly casual use of misogynistic language across society. I'll tell you, the only thing that I would consider to be casually used in terms of misogyny or misogynistic language is the word itself that gets thrown about by feminists too often. Whether used knowingly or as a means of identifying within the crowd, the attitude promotes among the perpetrators and the impact it has on the targets can be both long and lasting and serious. I mean, the way they speak about women, not only do they try to create this narrow crest, but it's so demeaning and patronising at the same time. Recognising misogynistic attitudes and behaviours within schools. Displays of misogyny among children and young people occur in a variety of forms. Casual use of mildly misogynistic language, such as girly as an insult or pejorative term, man up implying that masculinity is preferred to femininity. Okay. Casual through often vindictive use of overtly sexualized and derogatory language, such as slut and skank. Feminist and feminism considered as negative terms. Oh my days. I'm sure that's what's holding girls back in primary school and nursery schools. Coming to terms with the fact that feminism is considered negative by their so-called peers. Feminazi used to silence women and girls. So this is the so-called research that's being conducted, and these are the so-called examples that have been given as means to provide evidence regarding misogynistic attitudes and behaviour. Therefore, these are the sort of things that we need to stamp out. So, in other words, you've picked up a bunch of things that you don't like about society, pretended that this research was conducted in order to present these findings, in order for you to then come away with solutions to quell all of these things that you dislike. Dismissive, contemptuous attitudes of some boys towards female pupils and staff, towards their mothers, and sometimes acceptance or endorsement by male staff for such attitudes towards female colleagues. Objectification of women and girls on the basis of their looks. And you're not telling me that girls aren't the same way when it comes to boys. Dismissive attitude that women and girls should have responsibility for menial domestic chores. Mockery and derision when women and girls adopt non-stereotypical gender roles. For example, as football fans, footballers or surgeons. Oh my fucking god, get a grip. Nobody cares. Criticism of young women who are sexually active compared with the acceptance that young men are, or should be. Sexual entitlement issues arise in various guises. Overt sexual proposition of girls and young women through to boys pushing, grabbing and groping of girls doesn't happen. Joking about the sexual abuse and physical violence against women and girls, or framing conversations about the issue in such a way as to blame victims. Engagement with computer games which are demeaning in their portrayal of women and often normalise violence against women. Oh my god. This is unfucking believable. This is what happens when radical feminism is left to fester. The theme with these activists masquerading as organisations for creating policies is they conjure up fake research and present it as gospel truth in order to justify the solutions they had conjured up prior to the so-called research being provided. For example, when they say here that their research has shown a strong link between attitudes towards gender and the perpetration of violence against women. For instance, men and boys who hold traditional attitudes about gender roles believe in male authority and or have sexual hostile attitudes or victim blaming attitudes towards women are more likely to perpetrate violence against women against their intimate partners than those who do not subscribe to such views. Meanwhile, available data from the World Health Organization suggests nearly 1 in 3 women worldwide may experience sexual violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Okay, so in other words, what you are then going to come away with as a solution to quell, or at the very least ease this so-called problem, is to promote non-traditional attitudes towards women and men, non-traditional attitudes in general, in order to quell the so-called victim blaming and hostile attitudes that you proclaim exist. Men that hold traditional attitudes about gender roles, albeit might piss off feminists, but I would say that they are more inclined to care more about women and their well-being, and be less likely to do or say any of the things that you're accusing them of. Misogynistic attitudes towards women in public life. Another consequence of a culture which allows contempt for women to go unchecked is disproportionate low levels of participation by women in public life. What I find bizarre about this is in one breath they're saying that subjects in schools are stereotyped for either boys or girls and thus leads to different outcomes in later life, but then in the next breath they blame misogynistic attitudes in public life as a reason as to why there's less representation for females in certain sectors of society. Which one is it? In the UK, female politicians are routinely subjected to sexist comments in the press and other media, with women frequently marginalised by newspaper and media broadcast coverage in comparison to that afforded to their male counterparts, and often to their wives' wearing of fashion and such like. Now you're just on a tangent. Not an absolute tangent. Such demeaning treatment of women in this way has a damaging impact on their participation of women in public life and therefore on society. I thought it was the primary schools and the nursery education that was rampant with inequalities and sexism and so on. And now you're telling me it's the way that The Guardian presents Dominic Raab and his wife. Suggested strategies to combat the misogyny which plagues the children and the young people, apparently. Policy and practice, with whole school policy articulating local authority service plans, the precise language of which specifically addresses issues related to gender equality and violence against women and how establishments can tackle it. Teachers challenging groupthink among children and young people in relation to conventional attitudes towards gender. Peer-to-peer anti-sexism education. Anti-sexism, oh, for fuck's sake. Agree with people's a list of derogatory words and phrases that are unacceptable and knowing the reasons why, such as feminazi and feminism being a negative term. discussions around subject choice. Oh, like they don't have discussions about subject choice as it is. But of course, they need to be coerced to go into better subjects. Am I right? The ethos. School mission statements. Sensitivity to existing and safeguarding against further gender stereotyping of both boys and girls. Reflected in, for example, classroom resources, assigning of roles and responsibilities, regular and open discussion with pupils on issues relating to equality, for example, use of language which is derogatory towards women and violence against women and pornography, assemblies explicitly focusing on the issue, oh dearie me, explicit exploration of the topic within subjects such as modern studies, personal and social education, etc. Tackling of gender issues as they relate to the body. Learning designed to address issues such as gender equality, yada yada. Cross-curricular work themed around 16 days of action highlighting violence against women and International Women's Day. Consider how misogyny as gender stereotyping may impact on subject choice and take steps to tackle it. May be impacting. I thought it was a clear-cut case to be made here regarding stereotyping and misogyny, which of course hampers girls' subject choices. Now you're telling me it's a case of it may be impacting what they decide to do with their life. Could it be that maybe just boys and girls, men and women are different? I think that's a safe bet.